You're listening to the Greeks Gridiron, live with Ethan Haristodoulou.
Welcome back, everybody, to more of the Greeks Gridiron. I am Ethan Haristodoulou, and today I am diving into the New Orleans Saints and how I would like to see them approach free agency. As the period for free agent signing opens up next week, we're getting real close to the tampering period. Then a couple of days after that, things will officially open up and players will really start to move. We're already seeing some big name releases going on around the league, and it actually kind of adjusted how I decided to do this Saints preview here. So my Saints fans, comment down below. Let me know, how are you feeling about the signing of Derek Carr? What do you want to see from the Saints continuing forward as we get closer and closer to the beginning, or the official beginning, I should say, of free agency? Who do you want to see him let go? Who do you want to see him re-sign? Maybe somebody you want to see them go after in free agency. Because if there is one team that can make moves happen despite being $24.5 million over the cap at this current moment of me recording, it's going to be the New Orleans Saints. So when I look at the Saints, I just think, they'll make something happen, because whatever they have going on over there when it comes to bookkeeping, it seems like all of it is just magic, because they can seem to sign and bring in whoever they want, no matter how much money they don't have or don't appear to have. So we'll dive right in. We'll start things off with who I think that the Saints should let go here as we approach that beginning of free agency. And I'm going to have to be completely frank on this one here. Defensive end Marcus Davenport, man. Listen, a first-round draft pick that I just don't think has produced quite enough to warrant the money that Spotrac has him projected to potentially make in this free agency market here. They have him listed at $23.2 million per year, roughly, and looking at like a 4-year deal or so. I can't really imagine paying Marcus Davenport, who just came out of this past season with only half a sack and 29 tackles with 14 pressures on top of that and only 11 stops according to PFF, and only starting in 9 of the 15 games he played in. I can't, me personally, I can't dish out nearly that $100 million. Now, do I think that number might be a little bit high? Potentially, but you have to remember he is a first-round draft pick, and that does mean something at the end of the day, because one man's trash is another man's treasure. And I'm not saying Marcus Davenport is trash per se. What I'm saying is should he hit the open market, there is going to be a team or two, especially with some money, that I'm sure is going to look at him, go back to why were the Saints willing to draft him in the first round a handful of years back. Okay, he was obviously really impressive. He did have a few good years. He had 9 sacks in, I believe it was 2021. He had 6 sacks in another season as well. And a team could probably look at him and think, well, we can fit him in our scheme and we can get the most out of him. And maybe he'll have his ascension that, the Saints were expecting to have from him when they initially drafted him, 5 years ago now. So I could see that also driving up the market, and maybe he does get that $23 million. I just personally think, based off what you've seen from him on the Saints, especially this past season, again, only 15 games played and he only started in 9. How can you rationalize giving up nearly $25 million a year for somebody who may or may not produce for you, or may or may not even start for you? Again, I don't know if that $23.2 million a year is going to be what he ends up getting ultimately. I could see something close to that, like 20 million mark, maybe at like 16, 17, 18, 19, somewhere around there feels a little more realistic to me personally, because again, first round pick, he did have high upside coming in from the draft. So maybe there's a team that sees him and thinks we can take those physical tools and turn him into that 10, 12, 14 sack guy that they want to get out of him. But I personally just think that for having not started more than 13 games in a season since being drafted, and again, you're not seeing him start week in and week out, and he's a first round pick, probably going to warrant a lot of money. Part ways with the guy. You can find that same production for a lot cheaper. There's going to need to be some sacrifices going into this next season here, and I feel like Marcus Davenport is just way too expensive, or potentially going to be way too expensive, and based off the production, does not really make sense to me. Now, as for somebody I'd really like the Saints retain and bring on back, veteran of the defensive line, so we'll stay on the defense for this one here. Interior defensive lineman David Onyemata. At 30 years old, the guy has been around the Saints now for as long as I feel like I can remember at this point. The guy is a Saint, and I would like to see him stay a Saint for either the remainder of his career or at least for the foreseeable future. With 17 starts and 5 sacks this past season, he had 43 tackles, 5 tackles for loss, also 13 pressures, and was recorded for 26 stops by PFF. He's 30 years old, yes, but he's still a solid player, a guy that knows the defense in Dennis Allen's system over there, and for a team that is currently looking at like 5 or so guys, I forget what the exact number is, but 5 or so guys that are potentially going to be hitting the free agent market or are at least listed at this very moment, you want to retain some sort of, continuity, and a guy that's a leader in Onyemata. Say what you want about, him getting older. I think keeping one vet, a guy that Dennis Allen has had around for a while now on his defenses prior to him being a head coach over there in New Orleans, makes a lot of sense to me. You're probably going to see some decent turnover on that D-line. So keeping a guy that also knows the system is huge for whoever else you're bringing in who can kind of show you the ropes, or show them the ropes rather, and get them ready to roll going through training camp this year and into the next season. I'm not saying that the entire defensive line is going to look different next year, but I could definitely see you're probably looking at maybe 2, 3, and if things really get crazy, maybe 4 new guys on that D-line if things really get shaken up over there on that defensive front for the Saints. And I think you should be locking him up for something along the lines of like 2, maybe 3 more years, and then kind of revisit and see where he goes from there. Spotrac's projecting him for about $9.6 million per year in a $3-year deal. So you think about $10 million or so for a guy who's been solid, net you 5 sacks from the interior spot of the defensive line. I don't think you can really go wrong with that. And couple that with the fact that I'm sure he likes being in New Orleans. He's fairly established now. I think he's been in New Orleans for like 7 years now. I think 7, 8 years. I don't know how long his career has been off the top of my head, but for somebody that's been in New Orleans that long, your life's kind of settled there. I would assume he may want to stay there, and maybe he's willing to take somewhat of a team-friendly deal, even if it's just knocking off, like, instead of that 9.3 or 9.6 million, you're looking at like 8.5 or something like that, or maybe closer to 8, something along those lines, just to save the team a few dollars here and there, especially coming off the heels of the giant Derek Carr contract signing. See if maybe he's willing to take a little bit less to stick around in New Orleans. I think that it makes a lot of sense to keep him around with so much potential turnover on the defensive front. I really like Onyemata over there in New Orleans as well, so try to keep him around. I think it would be really good for this team going into this next season with the potential of so much turnover. Now, as for somebody that I would like to see the Saints bring in here, and I will come right out of it and admit that this is a bit of a pipe dream, but if I was to pick a team to be able to somehow make the money work, it's going to be the Saints and the wizardry they do with the cap over there and their void yield. I mean, give them 5 void years at the end of this deal if you really need to. Whatever you need to do to make that cap number work, I would be pumped for a team that should be going all in now, because that Derek Carr signing makes me feel like you're looking at Super Bowl or bust, and you need to be trying to make a serious run in that division now that Tom Brady's gone. Why not recently released from your division rival Tampa Bay Buccaneers linebacker Lavonte David? Talk about a massive upgrade to this linebacking core. Spotrac has him projected at about a 1-year deal. I could see him maybe signing even a 2-year deal, something like that. He is 33 years old, so you're not going to see him locked up for a super long time here, but 1 or a 2-year deal would make sense to me. Looking at about $9.7 million or so. So rounded up to roughly 10. Maybe that number is as low as 9. Maybe it's as high as 11, give or take. I mean, Lavonte David, coming off of a really impressive 2022 season, is not really showing any signs of slowing down. He's, I would say, one of the more underrated guys when it comes to coverage. He had 5 passes defense this past year, but he started all 17 games. He had 3 sacks, 124 tackles, 10 tackles for loss, a forced fumble. PFF clocked him in at 57 total defensive stops this year. This is a guy who feels like he's ageless, and he's currently winning the battle with Father Time. And again, for a team like the New Orleans Saints, who seems to know how to just kind of juggle the cap in every single way possible to get guys on that roster every single year, if there was a team that I could count on to make this signing work, even if it is a bit of a pipe dream, I would be all for it. He's from the division, so he knows 6 games that you're going to be playing a year, how those teams like to operate and do their thing. On top of that, he presents a really good opportunity to fortify a linebacking group that I'm not necessarily like the most impressed with. Obviously, you have Demario Davis there, so there's some upside with that. But I feel like this is a really, really strong signing and a we are here and we are here to win now type of signing for the New Orleans Saints. And again, if there's a team that I can count on to make this work with the money, gotta be New Orleans. But my Saints fans, let me know. What are you thinking as far as free agency goes for the Saints? You already have a massive signing in Derek Carr. Let me know how you're feeling about that. Let me know what you think of my Levante David signing, or about who I'd want to see let go, get brought back. I want to hear your opinions as well. Let me know in the comments section. But if you made it to the end, I appreciate you for watching all the way through. I'll catch you all in another video. Have a good one.